It's Y2K releasing today. This Kirblog from me on the Postmodern RPG. Welcome, everybody. It was a little over four whole massive years ago today in the fall of 2014, I believe. I went back home shortly after moving to California and got to record on a lovely little video game project that I am incredibly honored to be a part of. And as of the time that this Kirblog is releasing, it will have just released a couple days ago. And I am talking, of course, about Y2K, a postmodern RPG. It is a turn-based game, indie title from the lovely folks at AckkStudios, of which two members of the development team are here joining me today for a little interview. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves, first of all?
Hey, I'm Andrew Allanson of AckkStudios, co-creator of Y2K.
And I'm Brian Allanson of AckkStudios, also co-creator of Y2K.
And yes, indeed, the awesome Allanson brothers, as I like to call them. And the Allanson sister is not here with us. Sadly, she's busy. But shout out to Bridget Allanson, who is one of the artists on the game as well. She's excellent. Well, guys, Y2K is finally released. It's real now. It's here. I guess just to start off with, how does that feel after all this time?
It's awesome. It's exciting. It's terrifying. It's wonderful. It's all those things.
Yeah, it's very unreal.
And it's on virtually all major systems, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it's on PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch. It's on Steam for both PC and Mac. You'll be able to buy it on a bunch of PC platforms as well, not just Steam. Like, it'll be on itch.io and on Humble, and hopefully Good Old Games as well. It'll be out by the time this video is airing.
Beautiful. Yes, airing on TV. That's
exactly.
That's where my YouTube is. Well, I guess just to start off with, so for those of you who maybe haven't been keeping up with the journey that these guys have been taking to work on this thing for the last several years, just to give you a bit of a basic overview. So Y2K Postmodern RPG is, as I said, it's a turn-based RPG, and it is very much along the aesthetics that I personally enjoy. It's kind of a low poly N64 PS1 era sort of thing. The gameplay elements are particularly inspired by the likes of the Earthbound/Mother series, a little bit of Persona as well. It takes place in the year 1999 and covers a whole lot of supernatural and superstitious topics. Goes into a lot of pretty deeper interpersonal and social issues as well with its characters. Has a lot of really imaginative and psychedelic, crazy concepts, and a wild assortment of weird-ass characters, not the least of which is my own. I voice, and those of you who don't know this either, I had the esteemed pleasure of getting to voice the main character, Alex Eggleston, who fights with the power of throwing vinyl records, and that's not a joke. and everything is kind of all focused around his development as a person, and everything is tied into the event that was Y2K when the year 2000 struck, and all of the kind of superstition surrounding world-ending possibilities with that. So that's the kind of basic gist. So do you guys want to kind of go into, I guess, first and foremost, first of all, you guys created Two Brothers before this, and it's also Two Brothers goes by a different name, I think, as well. Is that right?
Yeah, Chromoforce.
Chromoforce, that's right. So I guess, do you guys want to start off with talking about kind of what led to the creation of Y2K and the direction you guys went in, and how you kind of, because you didn't do any kind of like Kickstarter or anything. That this was just like you guys went straight forward and started making it. So please elaborate.
Well, the beginning of development's kind of funny. We had made Two Brothers, and it was a game that we had kickstarted for, I think it was like $12,000. Very small budget game, and we learned a lot making the game. It was our first time doing it, and then when we completed the game, we're like, okay, well, we need to we need to make something else. We had a bunch of ideas spinning around our head, and we needed some sort of motivation to get started. So we did something kind of stupid where we booked a booth at PAX East, and we didn't have a game. And we said, PAX is in 50 days. We have to have a new idea and a new sort of like concept and a demo in 50 days. So Brian and I sort of like buckled down every night and weekend, and we made a prototype for Y2K. And the idea came from, we were playing the Onet stage in Super Smash Bros. Melee, and we like to pause the stages and sort of like look at like, you know, how awesome the environment was in the distance. And we got to talking about how cool it would be to have a sort of modern RPG that was in 3D, you know, because Mother 64 never came out. So we thought that it would be, you know, a kind of sort of like fun thing to try and create like an RPG in modern times. And then just we started talking about it more and more, and within like 45 minutes of just, you know, looking at this Onet stage, we had a bunch of ideas for characters and some general gameplay concepts. And then we made a bunch of concept screenshots, and from the screenshots we created the prototype, brought the prototype to PAX East, and we ended up showing it to a bunch of publishers, and you know, we got a bunch of interest on it, and in the end, it was Ysbryd Games, based in Singapore, who we decided to work with, and they funded the development of the project, and you know, they've been supporting us in our development this entire time.
Remind me, by the way, because another little quick shout out to our voice director and casting director, Brittany Lotta, who brought me on. Was that the same PAX where she happened to meet you guys?
Yes, it was.
Oh, wow,
yeah,
okay.
we met the voice-over director for Y2K at that same PAX, and she came over. And once we got funding for the game, and we were thinking about how we were going to approach voice acting, I was like, oh, I think we had met a voice actress who, you know, who did directing and casting. So we emailed Brittany, and she turned out to be like the absolute real deal when it comes to anime voiceovers. Mm-hmm. And we're like, okay, well, Brittany seems to know what she's doing. So, you know, we put the casting and the voiceover direction in her hands, and she really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, which I want to talk about that process a little bit later. But, yeah, you know, it's funny. I maybe because, you know, we spent about a week together during the recording process, but we might have talked about this while I was there and I was first getting to know you guys, because it's so strange. I personally have only ever played, I think up through like the first like dungeon or so of Earthbound / Mother 2. I've never played Mother 1 or, well, you know, legally I've never played Mother 3. Cough, cough. But yeah, I was always intrigued by the Earthbound 64 kind of beta stuff that was always kind of circulating around because the look of it was just so striking and interesting to me. But it's funny because I realized, oh yeah, this is kind of like, in some weird way, it is like a spiritual successor to a game that never came out. You know, it like Earthbound, I know is probably the biggest influence, you know, just overall in that, like, it all takes place in like sort of a real world, like not quite, well, you know, there are fantastical settings, but like it's based around a very normal kind of area. Because the whole game essentially is in like New York and New Jersey, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which you'll even see if you guys have ever seen any footage of the overworld of this game. It is very much just the East Coast of the United States.
Yeah, just turned sideways.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, well, I guess, well, going from there then, so you had this prototype, and, well, I guess, first of all, what was in the prototype? Like, what kind of, like, basic stuff, just, like, to start you off?
Well, the prototype, it starts off with Alex and Michael. Alex is hanging out in his bedroom playing video games, and Michael comes over, and you know, he wants to, like, this girl they met recently named Vela wants to show them some sort of like break in reality that she's discovered. So they go out, and she opens up this portal, and they go inside to this first dungeon. And a lot of concepts that stayed in the game, like the entities, which are like these sort of like paranormal beings in the game, those originated from the prototype. They just looked very different. So it had a battle mode, and it had like one basic dungeon, and then like 3 cutscenes throughout.
Okay.
So it was actually a pretty substantial demo. It was like a proper vertical slice.
Very different art style. I remember some of the early looks of everything back then, seeing some of the concept art that you guys had before it has the current visuals of what it looks like now. So it's kind of like a generic sort of like they go out to solve a mystery without some of the deeper stuff. Like I'm assuming Sammy didn't exist or any of those other characters just yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and Andrew, you also you wrote the whole script. Is that right?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's, and because I don't want to give away too much because there's some heavy stuff in this game. But there were a lot of obviously there's the fun supernatural investigative kind of stuff like the kind of the whole kickoff of Alex and Michael, his best friend, voiced by the lovely Cliff Chapin of My Hero Academia fame, who I've had on here before. They go hunting for this girl who's disappeared after this crazy, almost dreamlike experience that Alex has. Like, he's not even sure if it really happened for certain. And they go, looking for clues on what the hell just happened. That's kind of where it starts, and it's like this kind of like fun cross trip, interstate adventure of trying to figure out what's going on. But then it gets more and more and more insane and completely off the rails. But you can tell that there's a little bit of something strange to it to begin with, because there's also these kind of mind dungeons, which are these interesting sort of levels that you go through that are entirely in like this psychedelic looking mindscape. So there were a lot of very out there kind of thing in the coolest way possible. But what kind of led to the direction that you went with of having this very not even serious, but just this pretty deep story, I would say?
Well, I think we kind of wanted a game that felt like a game when you played it and felt like a game on the surface, but try to do something a little different with the story. And I think when a lot of people play the game, especially watching people streaming it now, I think we did a pretty good job of the game appearing like it's something very different when you first start. Mm-hmm. What you think is going to happen with the character Alex, what you think the game is setting up to. So, when we started the game, we had this idea in mind that the game would sort of appear as one thing on the surface level, and as you went through it, it would kind of play out more like a novel, or in some ways like a David Fincher movie, or something like Inherent Vice. And when we were creating the script, we had this very conscious idea that it should feel like a video game in the sense of certain plot beats are sort of set up, but then the game should sort of mislead you into thinking where it's going. So that was kind of how all of that came to be about, was really just this idea of trying to have a bit of misdirection in the first couple hours of the game.
Yeah, it's what I found it to be effective from the different demos that I'd played at PlayStation Experience, and even when I was in seeing what the early stuff you guys were looking on. We're working on. Excuse me. Sometimes I speak for a living. It has this feeling of you can relate to what's happening, and that it's so kind of I'm just in this town and I'm going to the store and meeting some dude that's trying to sell me CDs or whatever, and then I go to this arcade and find this person, and then when the really strange things happen, especially as they kind of get more and more out of control, as the story progresses, it has this this very effectively unsettling vibe to it, where you could totally see yourself in the midst of these bizarre things happening, where it feels oh God, am I gonna die right now? And I think actually coupled with the because there's something kind of creepy about the low poly of that era kind of vibe of Nintendo games and PlayStation games and everything that I like that is unsettling, and what's exciting about watching a horror movie kind of way to me personally. So I find that very charming.
It's interesting that you say that, because when we were working on development early on, we were talking about how so many PS1 games were so unsettling without being horror games. If you look at the first Tomb Raider game, just something about the general aesthetic and the way that the sort of geometry would distort in the distance, there was something that was inherently disturbing about it. So when we were first crafting the sort of look of the game, that was something that Brian was very conscious about, trying to sort of emulate that in the look.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Brian, you designed a lot of the environments specifically, if I'm remembering from when I was like at your guys' studio. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So like the areas that I've seen, I mean, like they range from like quaint little fun town with like the very vibrant kind of like pastel colors and things. And then you have like the mine dungeons, which are just these like almost like MC Escher kind of weird paintings come to life. What were some of your inspirations, and like where did certain I guess maybe without giving away everything, like were there some certain areas throughout the game that were like really special to you that you thought like turned out really cool?
Oh, I have to think. In terms of inspiration, like I'm struggling to think of stuff now. Obviously, like just pretty much anything I've ever played got kind of thrown into a blender for one thing.
I think with some of the more surreal things, like you looked at a lot of like Junji Ito sort of imagery rather than just like the pure horror. Almost like how like the construction of the visuals.
That's true. I was looking at a lot of that stuff at the time.
Junji Ito and obviously like Salvador Dali and like David O'Reilly's like early animation work, like Wolf and
yeah, that's obviously always been a big inspiration to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've only seen really a small taste of some of the stages, and caught glimpses of some of the other ones, and the various trailers that have been coming out over the years, and even like the release date one or the launch one that has just hit a little while ago. Like even like some of the stuff in there, I'm like the fingers like trying to crush you like while you're like going through a piano. And all these like weird little like floating things throughout like a big void, and you're like flying around in space, and I'm just like, oh right. And I'm sure that like there was stuff that we recorded for each of those areas, but it's been so long that like that's what's exciting for me, is that like I feel like when I play this game, I'm gonna be going into it like relatively blind.
Yeah, definitely.
You'll be literally blind. You'll have heard everything, but you don't know what it looks like yet.
Yeah. And I don't remember like absolutely everything because it's been 4 years now. But on that note, I do want to talk about the recording process. So Brittany Lotta, of course, and she works at Funimation now. She's worked on a whole bunch of anime stuff. She reached out to me, and I auditioned for Alex. And the biggest thing that I was really excited about when I got to again, I had just moved to California, and I found myself already having to come back in November to record. And we got together for, I think it was about a week and a half or so I was there. And we had Cliff Chapin, as I mentioned before. We had Melanie Ehrlich, Anthony Sardina, Michaela Laws, and then separately Yuri of Wind was recorded too. And I think, was that everybody on the main cast, I think, right?
Main cast, yeah.
Yeah. And we had some other guests as well. We had like Michelle Knotts and some other folks. And one of the coolest things about this, and in fact, this was one of the first experiences that I had with this process, was we got to record virtually the entire game ensemble. As in, all of the main actors were together to record all of the main story content. Now, for those of you who don't know, for animation, like for like any like Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon show or whatever, like that is typically how it will go. That is typically how it goes. Is you have all of the main cast together in the same room, and they get to play off of each other and record the full half-hour episode. For video games, that almost never happens. There have been cases where it does. I can recall some video games where, and it's becoming a little bit more common practice, like under certain circumstances, but generally you do everything solo. But yeah, there was you guys had a full like whisper room built together. And actually, not even a whisper room. It was a whole like full space for everyone to comfortably fit in. I mean, it was freezing because it was the dead of fall in New York.
Yeah.
Closer to Thanksgiving time, I think. But yeah, we all got to record together, and we had you and our engineer Jose and Brittany directing. And that in and of itself, just to start with, even before like we knew what the full content was, that was a massive privilege, and I felt that lent so well to because you have all of these characters together virtually the whole time throughout the story and everything. You collecting them as you go along the way. But I felt that energy that we had, all of us, me and Cliff and everyone, lent so well to what we were going for with the kind of group dynamic. And not every game has the luxury, even like big budget AAA games don't have the luxury of getting to do that. so I felt we were all collectively very fortunate. But do you guys have any comments about just like the whole process of that like week and a half that we got together?
Yeah, it was oh boy. Voice acting is one of the hardest things about making a game, just because the sheer amount of files you have to like cut up and edit. So like besides from the actual process of getting the performers, to do their thing, just taking that audio and getting it into the game and processed and mixed, huge undertaking. So before everyone flew into New Jersey, we were trying to figure out what the best and most cost-effective way was to record the game. We knew that we wanted everyone in the same space because, we had this idea where the characters would have, vaguely anime-sounding voices, but we wanted it to be performed almost more like a play, a little bit more realistic, rather than sort of like over-the-top emulating like Japanese voice acting. Mm-hmm. And when we had said this to Brittany was like, okay, well, you're going to want everyone together so they can play off each other. So it feels less like they're reacting to something that's, not actually in the room. So we looked into getting a studio space to record, and everything was like $500-$600 an hour in the area to have that many microphones set up. And we looked at like a week of recording, and we realized it would be cheaper for us to buy a 10 by 14 sound booth and assemble it ourselves, have it shipped from Omaha and assemble it, and then buy microphones and record it ourselves, than it would be to do like even like 5 recording sessions. We were going to easily need 15.
Yeah.
So, we picked up this gigantic Whisper Room. We had it shipped. It came on a truck. And then it took us like a week and a half to assemble. Jose and I put the whole thing together. We had everything set up for when everyone arrived. And I think at the most we had 5 people recording at once.
Yeah, we stuffed a lot of people in there, definitely.
Yeah. And, when we did this, we almost didn't have time to get nervous about directing the voice acting, because we had spent so much time just like in this bum rush of getting the studio set up for everyone to arrive, that it was almost like a godsend, because we didn't have to think about the sort of daunting task of doing like these 10-hour recording sessions. So that's like one of the biggest things that like I took away from that, from that experience, was just how crazy it was having so many people there just arriving. And the script is massive.
Yeah, it's crazy because, I've had projects that I've worked on for a long period of time. There's one I'm doing right now that I've worked on for like well over a year, just a video game. But I think in like a single stretch of time, nothing has topped Y2K in terms of how many, like the sheer amount of man. Because even like Tales of Zestiria, which I think I had just finished like right before I came in to do that, I like that. I think I finished everything for my character on that in maybe about like 12 hours, like combined. So it was only a few days, but we spent like a solid week, because I think it was 5 days, and then I think we took a break for the weekend, and then I think I came back the following week, because I also mixed in there, because Alex, like many characters I play, especially in video games, he has a habit of going on very long internal monologues for pages on end. So I had a couple days where it was just me, doing like I think about like 4 hours worth of just my stuff by myself. And I remember like, just because of, I think we could all collectively tell, like, while we had the advantage of having everyone together, it was also still taking a lot longer than I think anybody expected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so for the sake of not bleeding you guys dry in terms of funding, I think like by the second week where we just had a couple extra days, I was like, okay, let's just like really not mess around, and we'll just try to finish absolutely everything as efficiently as we possibly can. And thankfully, Alex was a basic fit for me because I wasn't like doing a voice for him. I wasn't doing any kind of particular like out of the ordinary style. Like I've certainly improved in those years, but like I'm still probably very proud of my performance on him because it was just me talking effectively. So it wasn't too hard of a stretch for me, I guess, acting wise. But yeah, no, it was an incredible experience. Like I am still to this day very, very grateful. And it's funny because it prepared me another year or so later for when I got OKKO on Cartoon Network, because that's the most amount of like ensemble recording that I've gotten to do, and I feel that because on that game, or sorry, excuse me, on that show rather, although it's very game based, I've gotten to work with a lot of like really big like veteran guys that I would probably be very scared to be acting with, and I feel that because I then had the experience of a lot of hours of recording with other actors together, like a lot of people, that prepared me. So I owe you guys a lot for that. I feel so. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that worked out.
Yeah. And yeah, as I recorded through the game and I got to know you guys more and more, because we were there in your guys' studio where you were making the game, on a day-to-day basis, and I'm so sorry because it's been a while. What was the name of the other programmer that was there with you guys at the time?
There was a level designer, Ian, who he was there.
Ian, that's right. Yeah, shout out to Ian. He was great. He hung out with us a lot, and Jose, who engineered, and Bridget, who was doing art. You guys were great, and we spent a lot of time. We were getting meals together and shit. It was fun. It was really like a super super fun process together for all of us, and going back and forth between New York and Jersey and everything. And yeah, like as I was getting to know you guys, and also as I was getting to know the story, I felt like I was getting to know the type of people you guys were through the story too, because, and again, without going into the specifics, like there's some pretty dark stuff that comes up, especially a little bit later into the game, and I could tell like you were people after my own hearts because you were wanting to talk about pretty serious issues in your game story, and I was curious also, kind of, excuse me, what led to wanting to include some of those things into, this already like pretty out there story, but then also like, by the way, we're gonna deal with some of these things that are like, okay, like the things that kind of caught me off guard as I was recording them myself, that I was like, we're going in this direction now. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. All right. This is important. So I was kind of curious, like what led to wanting to include some of those things in there.
I think a lot of times with media, things become too focused on one specific genre. Like a horror movie is going to be perpetually disturbing throughout, and you're going to feel bleak the entire time. And a comedy is going to be pretty much funny the entire time until there's the heartfelt moment at the end, and then it goes back to being funny. And there's like these sort of really predictable sort of story beats. And if you look at like authors like Haruki Murakami, where he writes this sort of like surreal slice of life kind of stories, there's this really nice effect where it emulates real life, despite being very surreal and out there, where there's so many different things that happen to the characters over the course of these long spans of time that it feels a bit more like a realistic portrayal of real life. And with the game, I kind of wanted to try and capture something like that, where these things happened not because I was trying to deal with like a specific social issue or something, but more because it was something realistic that happens with people, something that actually comes up, something that normal people encounter. And if you do like a story about that one thing, it kind of ends up feeling a bit like propaganda, or like a sort of like a special alert, like what's going on with your kids kind of thing.
Right.
So I find like the most effective way to even talk about that kind of stuff is to mix it in with a bunch of other emotions, and that sort of gives it a much more realistic feeling, and it feels a little bit less heavy-handed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like that moment, without going into the specifics of it, that moment was like right when I realized, like, okay, this is going to be really special. This isn't just like, it's not just the fact that like I really personally am into everything that this game is doing, like on the the fun side, just it as a game, but also from the story side, I was like, okay, this is more than what I'm even thinking it is. And even also because, you know, the egomaniac in me, it's like, oh, cool, I'm the main guy, and I get to talk a lot, and I get to go through all these, like, emotional, like, roller coaster dips and loops and everything. Like, that in and of itself, on the self-indulgent side, it was I was super gratified about. But it was when some of these more serious things came up that I was like, oh, this is even bigger and better than I expected it, and I really want this to do well. And so far, you know, and even with the time that it's taken before it's been released, you know, because people have been following this and people have been really excited about this game, because I've seen a lot of, like, really positive press and comments and different things about this. I mean, like, and you've been keeping an eye. You were saying you've been watching people streaming it already. You know, by this point we can't, you know, because we're recording this ahead of time before the game is officially out. But what has your guys' experience been with in terms of other people recognizing, like, what you've been doing with this game and the kind of responses you've been getting from folks?
Well, the best one was Nintendo of Japan recognizing the game and featuring us in this. They did like a sort of like Nindies Direct called like Nindy World, and like, you know, getting to sort of like get the sort of like acceptance from Nintendo who played the game, being like, okay, like here's this thing we're going to highlight, because it's very hard to get chosen for that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And so that was like, I think, one moment where it felt very real. And seeing that type of feedback has been great. And then from people at conventions, you know, sort of like getting to feed off of the things that they're interested in as working on the game, what kind of stuff they're responding to, figuring out what we're doing too much of or too little. That's been great. And, you know, we're starting to see, you know, like some early impressions of the game, and those have all been, you know, very positive. So that kind of, it's starting to feel like the 4 years of hard work was worth it.
Yeah, we even, I remember on the recording side of things, too, we added, I think there were 2 points after the initial, like, that 2 weeks of recording that we did. Like, over the last couple of years, we added some extra stuff with Alex that I recorded, like, on my own, and that I think that it also helped to flesh him out as a person, which I was glad about.
Alex is he's a complicated character. He's not at first a particularly lovable character.
Yeah.
He's a bit like Shinji he's like Shinji if he didn't cry all the time. And you know, he has a lot of his own sort of like personal shit that he works through, and it kind of brings other people down. And as we were working on the game, we're like, well, we need to make sure that people know that this is going to be a redeeming story, and that we're aware that this character, you know, needs to grow as a person. So we wrote some scenes that sort of, you know, made Alex a little bit more aware of, you know, how he needs to grow and him sort of struggling with that. So, you know, that's why we ended up doing that stuff. And that came from people when we first started doing QA, getting people's feedback every day. People were like, oh man, Alex is such a jerk sometimes. And it's like, well, yeah, but, you know, he's going to grow. You know, if you can't tell, then you probably think I'm a psychopath if you're playing this game and assuming Alex isn't going to grow as a person. So that's why we ended up inserting those scenes to sort of like mitigate that fear from people, you know, that we were unaware that Alex was a jerk.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation because, like, like Shinji is a perfect example of, like, you run into that problem of, like, you know, oh, this person's, like, you know, kind of at a bad point in their life, and they're, like, not fully developed as a human yet, you know, but, like, if they're quote unquote insufferable, then you know, is the journey worth it? And that's kind of the risk that you run with that. But no, and even, you know, in the initial stuff that we did, I was like, well, I'm sad to say that I relate to this character in some points, but it's because, like, you know, even in some way I've been kind of joking that, like, the fate of the world sort of depends on this guy learning to not be a douchebag in not so many words. You know, but that's kind of like, I think that's a good thing that, like, anybody can take, because I think everybody, especially when they're young and don't know what that, because actually this is regarding the setting too, because it takes place right after he's come back from college, I think, right? Or after high school? Yeah,
come back from college.
Yeah.
College, yeah.
And he's like, well, now what am I going to do? I never figured out what I was going to do next, and that's kind of the problem with him.
Yeah, and he comes back, and he sort of expects life to sort of just fall into place. Mm-hmm. And he realizes that that's not really how life works, and sort of like in an effort to not face up to reality, he ends up becoming obsessed with this, internet forum that's all about missing people and conspiracies, and that kind of becomes his sole distraction. And like over the course of the game, like his mom is like pushing him, like we need to do something else here. You can't just be doing this all day. You have to help out. And I think that's happens to a lot of people. I mean, I've known a lot of people who finish school and they expect life to fall into place, and it doesn't. What school is like, at best, it's a time machine getting you to an age where people will take you kind of seriously, but it doesn't really prepare you for that much, especially if you're not self-aware.
Yeah. And especially if you're going to art college. I can say personally. I think from again, even just the initial stuff that we did, even before we added the other things later, I think that was the biggest takeaway. Is it's like this is something that I think that most people, especially of I don't want to sound like an old person, but of this generation, I think that anybody now that is around the same age as these characters, I think that can all relate to in some way. And it's just kind of it's not even that it's in like a preachy way either.
Yeah, it's not a PSA. The game's not a PSA.
Yeah, it's just sort of this is how life is sometimes, and it's not always pretty, and sometimes also weird shit happens, and you have to work through it as best as you can. But also, even when you're surrounded by people that are freaking bizarre, you can still come out okay, and you can still have a support system for yourself.
Right.
Which, on that note, I actually wanted to ask you guys, and other than Alex, obviously because I'm biased, did you guys have a favorite character, whether it was of the main playable party members or of some of the other ones that were on the side throughout the story that you really liked?
For me, my favorite character is Michael because he's based on a real person. And it was kind of fun getting to sort of emulate how this real person would react in these situations. And there's an interesting sort of character development with Michael near the end of the game that's based on a real event where this guy sort of overnight he gained some piece of knowledge and sort of understanding about something that sort of elevated him to be this, I guess, much more sort of serious person. So, there was a lot of sort of internal jokes between me and Brian about sort of emulating this real person in the game. And he just played the game recently, and he was like, I can't believe what you did with my character by the end. He's like, I feel very honored. And of course, Cliff just knocks it out of the park as playing him, because Michael has this sort of very stupid dad joke kind of sense of humor. And Cliff he delivers the lines in such a way that, make the jokes almost funny.
Even if they're not actually, which is a feat in and of itself. Yeah, I think I remember telling, I know I said this when we were recording, oh, my best friend's name is Mike also.
Oh yeah.
That worked out. And also even my programmer on my game that I'm doing now is also named Michael, so I'm like, oh, clearly you guys, I was destined for this.
Yes.
Brian, how about you?
There's so many characters. It's hard. I think I really like Rory. I like where his story goes. It's pretty interesting. Depending on how you play the game, some people will find out more about him than others, but he's pretty interesting. There's also some stuff at the way end of the game visually. There's a character. I don't want to talk about it, but I really like how that character looks. Mm-hmm. So if someone beats the game, they'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
they can just come back here.
Yeah.
The cool thing about Rory is literally the opposite of Alex in every capacity.
Yeah.
Whereas Alex sort of comes from this really nice town and a sort of better family structure, Rory is kind of he's been dragged through the mud his entire life.
Yeah, he's actually I think in an unfortunate way, but I think in a way that is helpful. I think that Rory is now a very relatable character to people too, because of just how troubled he is, and and kind of the story of the others kind of coming into his life and helping him out is something that I think, if again, not that it's a PSA, but I think that if that's one thing of hey, you're not alone, you're not in this alone kind of thing, and I know it's hard, but there are people out there that can help you, kind of thing that I liked. So the inclusion of him, and also the inclusion of him as a party member, and not just like a story relevant NPC or something, I think was also really nice too. Because even when you have 15 different party members, you don't always have the attention to spend on everybody in that sense.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about Rory's gameplay is his character is he's a sort of pacifist, and he doesn't really want to fight. So he uses his abilities to protect the different party members. So Rory is essentially that you can set him up to take damage for another character, and his abilities are all based around this idea that he's sort of non-violent, and he is all about sort of being the punching bag in combat.
I personally also really enjoyed Claudio because
fantastic! Yeah.
I've known Anthony for I think I've known Anthony for almost 10 years now, and he's first of all one of the most naturally funny guys I've ever met. He's such a charming and hilarious dude, and I mean Claudio is because okay, this is the reality of. I've noticed that in the indie game scene, Anthony is the go-to guy whenever anybody's ever I have a funny African American character. Who do I get to voice this character? Anthony Sardina.
That's funny.
With just always whether they know it or not, but it's what everybody thinks. It's always what happens. But and so I always try to give now I try to give him things that are different just to challenge him because he always gets that, but he's always so good at it. And the fact that Claudio is also a weeb and completely he has all these raging monologues about this anime that doesn't exist that you guys wrote all this backstory for.
Oh
in the middle of his dialogue.
Yeah.
I'm just I love this guy.
It's funny, Claudio's character as this sort of weeaboo kind of guy, it's all based on how my sister Bridget was growing up. She was so into I guess it was Tokyo Mew Mew, I think was the name of it.
Oh yeah.
And she was obsessed with it, and she could tell you every single fact about that stupid series. And so when I was trying to come up with a sort of a quirk for his character, the most obvious thing to me was to sort of make him this sort of really muscular guy who walks around in a shoujo shirt. And his thing is that he just really loves shoujo anime. And but it all comes back to the fact that it was the anime that him and his younger brother, who went missing when he was a child, that they watched together. Mm. And sort of he continues to watch the series because it reminds him of when he had his now missing younger brother.
Yeah. Because that was also when we had some of those discussions, and you can hear a little bit of in the trailers too. Is I remember that was some of the first time I got to hear Anthony do really subtle stuff. I mean, because obviously he's so good at comedy, but he his really heartfelt stuff, talking about the little brother and everything, was so sweet, and I was oh, I love this guy. So during the recording stuff, he became. See, that's the thing. He was my favorite during the process of making it. I'm curious now that I'm going to see everything fully in context and in the proper order, because we did some stuff out of order too. I'm curious to find if I might grow to one of the other characters as my favorite too. Because they all have weird shit going on with them too.
It's interesting because based on QA people and the few reviewers I've talked to, Chandra ends up being everyone's favorite character by the end.
Oh yeah.
Which is interesting because when I wrote her, I was I wonder how people are going to take this character, because she's very bossy, and she's the one person who will not let Alex get away with anything. Even if Alex is being nice, she's calling him out on it. Yeah.
I mean, Vela's much more passive. She doesn't enable them so much, but certainly she's a little more yeah, okay. And
she's a bit more zen.
Yeah, Chandra's just no.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some other things to go, because again, there's so much I want to talk about, but I don't want to spoil things.
Maybe after the game's been out for a while, we should do a spoiler cast.
Yeah, you know what? Let's come back and a year from now. I want to come back and touch base with you guys and get Brittany and Bridget and some other folks on board. But,
that's a good idea.
For sure. Well, I guess we've gone for about 45 minutes or so. I guess to kind of start wrapping things up here, then. I guess do you guys want to? I mean, you've had the opportunity to do some really cool interviews, and you've been to a lot of conventions the last 2 years, especially the PAXs and stuff. But I guess just on here to anybody who may be listening, do you want to say anything to anybody who may, if whether they played the game or not, like just anything about this game that you want people to know that maybe they might not already get from somewhere else out there?
I'd like to say that whatever you think this game is, it's not what you think it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing I want to point out is the game is in no way political. I think there have been some people who have been misinformed that the game's political, that the game is in no way concerned with politics. And I think, because of Alex looking like a hipster, like I think they kind of get this. There's some people who kind of think like, oh, is this going to be a game that's sort of like about like I guess the kind of things they traditionally think millennials would care about. And, that's just, it's not what it is. It's not that kind of story. And, I kind of agree with Bob Dylan about things that are political. They're dead the moment you create them because politics are always changing.
Yep.
So there's like no point in creating anything political at all.
Even when I wear my, I'm literally wearing my Y2K shirt right now. And when people see Alex, they're even like, oh, so he's like a hipster. I'm like, no, he's not a hipster. He's not a hipster. I know that he looks that way because he's got the haircut and the glasses or whatever. It's a misdirect. It's not what you think.
Well, it's interesting because, Alex is kind of based on like Rivers Cuomo from Weezer in like the 90s where he was trying to look like Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
And since then, everyone has taken on that Buddy Holly aesthetic where I think it kind of becomes synonymous with hipsters. And when Brian and I were first designing Alex, we were pretty much unaware of hipster culture, because we were kind of in like our own bubble. And, I think like in retrospect, like I wouldn't change the way Alex looks, but I think I would have played up the sort of nerd aspect in his appearance a little bit more to sort of make people not assume that he was like, like a super hipster douche. Yeah, I mean, he's a douche, but he's not a hipster douche.
Yeah, for sure. Well, because he has kind of a little bit more closer to like if you were Ginger, he has your haircut a little bit more. So.
Oh yeah, but my hair's changed now. But when we were making the game, yes. I've since changed my haircut so people aren't like, oh, are you trying to be this character from the game?
No. I mean, I don't deny that. I just put myself in my stuff because I'm an egomaniac. But so you're a better man than I. Well, cool. Well, hey, I'm hopefully by the time this comes out, I have gotten myself a copy of the game so I can play through it before Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out because I want to envelop myself in this. Y2K, a Postmodern RPG, is by this point available now for Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Steam. Please do pick it up.
Actually, let's
sure.
not Xbox One.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
So can you cut this? Is it possible?
Yes, I can.
Cool.
Let me. I'll cut in and I'll put this. Y2K Postmodern RPG is available right now for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Steam on PC and Mac too. I hope. Or
yes, Mac as well.
Excellent. So please do me a personal favor and these guys pick this game up and give it a shot. It is a ton of fun. It is incredibly imaginative. It's really cool, and it's one of the most, still to this day, it is one of the most special things I've ever gotten to work on. It was an absolute pleasure getting to be a part of this. And further, I can't wait to see what you guys make next, because I'm sure you're not going to stop now. So
Definitely not.
Yeah, thanks for talking to us about this. I'm really looking forward to people checking the game out and hearing their theories on it.
For sure. Do you guys want to plug any social media stuff or anything that you all have?
Yeah, sure. We're on Twitter at AckkStudios, ACKK Studios. We're on Facebook, but we don't really update it very much because Facebook is a vapid hellscape.
Slowly dying.
And and the game's website is y2krpg.com, YIIKRPG.com.
Does Easebird also have a Twitter or anything too?
Yes, they do. It's YSBRYD Games on Twitter.
Shout out to them. And pick up the game. Please do in the comments below leave any and all feedback that you may or may not have. I've uploaded the trailer on my channel as well just a couple days ago as of this time if you want to check out what the game is like. And we all hope you enjoy. And that's going to do it for now. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If I'm not mistaken, I believe next weekend's Kirblog will be a little special guest thing I'll be doing. I'm going to be hopefully doing a retrospective on the Kingdom Hearts series with the lovely and talented Mr. Ben Diskin. So look forward to that. And in the meantime, before that comes out and before Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out, pick up Y2K, a postmodern RPG, and give it a shot. I hope you enjoy it. And thank you all for listening. We'll talk to y'all later. Fare thee well.